Hi, my name is Byron Martin here at Logee's Greenhouses, and today we're going to be talking about the variegated Swiss cheese plant. This is a tropical climber. It grows in the understories of the jungles of South and Central America and tolerates very low light, but it also will attach itself to trees and climb up them, and eventually, as it matures, get into higher light. So it's a plant with a great deal of versatility in terms of its environmental needs. One of the things that South and Central America has is a wet and a dry season. And during the dry season, it really doesn't rain very much and there's very low moisture, and so the plant is very tolerant to lower moisture levels in both the soil and the air, as well as during the rainy season when it gets plenty of water and moisture. So this particular cultivar is Monstera borsigiana albo variegata, and you can see the leaves actually have some solid white in them, and they also have the flecking, and then they have the green. As I mentioned, it's a climber, so you can see the plant is actually going vertical. And in a home environment, that's how one would grow this. We would allow it to climb on a stake or a trellis, or sometimes large pieces of wood are put behind it, because the plant itself has these aerial roots. And you can see this one here was in the greenhouses, and it was hanging up. And you can see the aerial roots are climbing down. Now, these actually, if they get too long, you can trim them off, or they could be put back into the pot where they would take hold and form roots that actually become terrestrial. In terms of its culture, the plant, as I mentioned, is a low-light plant, and that is one of the reasons why it's so desirable in terms of a house plant, because it will actually tolerate light conditions that are fairly dim. You have to remember, though, that plants that tolerate low light, if you put them in too low a light, they actually don't grow. They'll actually just sit there, and of course, if it gets too dark, the plant will actually go backwards. These plants have been used for decades as indoor plantscapes or indoor decorating plants, mainly because they can tolerate the corner of a room away from a window and still look great for a long period of time, and even to some degree grow some. But if you want to get the most out of these, remember you need to give them good quality light, which would be keeping them near a window. If they get too much light and are not adjusted to it, the leaves themselves will bleach out. But as I mentioned before, that they are climbers that grow in the understories of the jungles and then climb up and actually find themselves very high light in the tops of the trees. So they have that versatility of both high and low light. In terms of their needs for moisture and water, typically, as we do with most plants, we dry them down and give them a drink. So right now this potting mix here is moist. You can see the color is very dark. Once that dries out, you want to give them a thorough watering and allow the water to drain through the pot into the saucer, and then recycle back to dry again, and then water and dry again. When growing them under lower light conditions, they'll need less fertilizer, and that's typical of all plants. When growing them under higher light conditions, you'll need more fertilizer. And in order to get the most out of these plants, as with all container plants, we need to actually feed them periodically. Now, these are not what we consider heavy feeders, in that they don't grow really, really fast and have huge demands for fertilizer, but they need to have applications during their active growing season, which is generally spring to fall, maybe once a month, with a dilute solution or a top dressing. One thing you can do is you can use a soluble salt fertilizer. They either come in a liquid or a granular that you dissolve in water. You simply take a small amount. Now this calls for a half a teaspoon to the gallon. I would actually go down to 1/8 of a teaspoon, so that's not very much, and we simply want to dip that out and put that into our watering can. This is a half-gallon watering can, so 1/8 of a teaspoon is a half a teaspoon to the gallon. And then you want to thoroughly water it in. This is almost at the level of a constant feed, but as I mentioned, if you're growing them under lower light, you want to back off on that. Probably do it every other watering. And because they have a great tolerance to a wide variety of cultural conditions, a little less fertilizer isn't going to make any harm. Too much fertilizer, of course, can cause burn. And that would be a condition where fertilizers build up in the soil over many waterings and then start to burn the leaves. So this is a half a teaspoon to the gallon of a soluble salt fertilizer. And we simply just give it a good drink, thoroughly saturate the media. And generally, when you're watering, you want to have a little bit of water come out the bottom of the pot. And one of the things about Monstera is they have high resistance to root rot in the soil. So unless this plant is actually sitting in water for long periods of time, there really aren't any problems with overwatering in terms of getting disease into the root system. Also with fertilizing, we can use granulars. This is a granular organic, and you'd simply just take out a teaspoon and sprinkle it onto the surface of the pot. On large pots like this, you could put a tablespoon. In even larger pots, you put 2 or 3 tablespoons. And the benefit of an organic granular fertilizer is that it has a slow release to it. Rather than putting fertilizer into your watering can every time and watering with it, you simply sprinkle it on the surface, and over a period of time that fertilizer leaches into the pot. So generally with granular organics, we'd apply it once a month during the active growing season. There's also less of a problem with burn on organics because the fertilizer concentrations aren't so available and so high.